This ordinary man is on a voyage, collecting biological specimens from around the world, following his deepest curiosities. Little known to him, he was following an age-old technique to become great at anything. The same one followed by Da Vinci, Mozart, and even Einstein. A few years later, this man will come up with a theory that will change our understanding of biology, humanity, and our place in the world. He was not a genius. In fact, he was below average in IQ by his own admission. Charles Darwin was an ordinary boy who didn't show any signs of genius. On the other hand, his cousin, Sir Francis Galton, had an exceptionally high IQ. He was by all means an accomplished scientist, but not quite as famous as his cousin. Darwin wasn't as smart, however, he did have a passion for collecting biological specimens. His father wanted him to study medicine, but he struggled in the subject and was eventually enrolled in a career in the church. A former professor then told him about his ship's upcoming voyage and offered him a job as the ship's biologist. This allowed him to put his passion for collecting to use, and he collected an array of specimens in South America. This sparked an intense interest in the origin of species, and he devoted the rest of his life to developing this theory, the theory of evolution. How did an ordinary boy beat geniuses in scientific accomplishment? And what was the force that inspired him to keep pushing in spite of all the challenges he faced? This elusive force can be used by all humans regardless of their intellect to become the greatest in any field they choose, provided they follow the 3 phases. This force is mastery, or as Robert Greene describes it, the feeling that we have a greater command of reality, other people, and ourselves. Although it might be something we experience only for a short while, for others, masters of their field, it becomes their way of life, their way of seeing the world. So what are the 3 steps to mastery, and how can we access them to become the best in our fields? The first step is apprenticeship. After your formal education, you enter the most critical phase in your life, a second practical education known as the apprenticeship. In this process, you will master the necessary skills, discipline your mind, and transform yourself into an independent thinker, prepared for the creative challenges on the way to mastery. Charles Darwin was offered the opportunity of a lifetime when he was asked to join a voyage aboard the HMS Beagle as a naturalist. But the prospect of leaving behind his family and embarking on a long and uncertain journey was daunting, and his father was dead set against the idea. Charles, who had never been to sea and had no formal training in science, was not sure if he was up to the task. He felt torn between his desire for adventure and the comfortable life that had been planned for him. Despite his reservations, Charles eventually decided to follow his heart and accept the offer. But as the ship set sail in December, he immediately regretted his decision. The boat was small and constantly tossed about by the waves, and Charles was plagued by seasickness and heart palpitations. He missed his family terribly and felt overwhelmed by the strange surroundings and unfamiliar faces. The captain of the ship proved to be a volatile and unpredictable man, and Charles struggled to connect with him. Feeling desperate and alone, Charles turned to what had always comforted him in the past, the natural world. He spent hours observing the plants, animals, and people around him, taking notes and collecting specimens. As he immersed himself in this work, he began to find a sense of purpose and belonging. Despite the challenges he faced, he was determined to make the most of his opportunity. As the ship continued to travel, Charles' curiosity and passion for science grew. He spent countless hours studying and collecting specimens, and his observations and research would eventually lead to the development of his theory of evolution by natural selection. Despite the personal struggles he faced along the way, Charles' voyage would prove to be a turning point in his life, setting him on a path that would forever change the way we think about the natural world. The apprenticeship phase is a critical period in the lives of successful individuals, during which they undergo a transformation that sets the stage for their future achievements. It typically lasts 5 to 10 years and involves self-directed learning and exploration. This phase is often overlooked because it lacks stories of great accomplishment, but it is during this time that the seeds of future success are sown. To make the most of this phase, it is important to understand the lessons that successful people have learned during their own apprenticeships. These lessons are universal and relate to human psychology and brain function, and can be distilled into one overarching principle and a 3-step process. These steps are deep observation, skills acquisition, and experimentation. Step 1. Deep observation, also known as the passive mode. When you enter a new career or environment, it is important to observe and absorb its reality rather than try to impress others or prove yourself. This includes observing the rules and procedures that govern success in the environment, as well as the power dynamics and relationships within the group. You should pay attention to both the stated and unstated rules and look for examples of people who have succeeded or struggled in order to understand the underlying work culture. You should also observe the power relationships within the group, understand who has real control, and how communications flow. As you observe and gather information about your new environment, you can eventually move from observation to analysis, honing your reasoning skills and understanding the larger trends in the field. The habit of observing and basing ideas and theories on what has been seen and analyzed will be an important skill for the second creative phase towards mastery, which is step 2, skills acquisition, the practice mode. Acquiring skills through practice is important in any field or activity. There's a natural learning process that leads to tacit knowledge or a feeling for what one is doing that is difficult to describe but easy to demonstrate in action. The apprenticeship system of the Middle Ages, which involved young people working in a shop for 7 years and learning through repetition and hands-on work with little verbal instruction, is an example of an effective system for training skills and achieving tacit knowledge. This natural model for learning, which uses the power of mirror neurons, which is the part of your brain involved in watching and imitating others, is highly suited to the brain and leads to development of exceptional skills. And now we move on to step 3, experimentation or the active mode. Once you've gained a certain level of skill and confidence, it is time to move on to the phase of active experimentation. This could involve taking on more responsibility, initiating a project, or doing work that exposes you to the criticism of others. The goal of this phase is to gauge your progress and identify any gaps in your knowledge. It is also an opportunity to test your character and develop a sense of detachment to your work, allowing you to look at it through the eyes of others. As you progress through this phase, you will reach a point where you feel that you have nothing left to learn in your current environment. This signals that it is time to declare your independence and move on to another place to continue your apprenticeship and expand your skill base. At this point, you have reached mastery of that particular skill and are ready to apply it in a new context. In today's complex and rapidly changing world, it is more important than ever to continuously learn and develop new skills in order to stay ahead of the curve. Technology has made many tasks easier, but it has also increased the complexity of the world and the demand for a wide range of knowledge and skills. To succeed in this environment, it is essential to have the ability to learn and adapt quickly. Now, at this point after your apprenticeship, you'll have developed enough skills to move on to the second phase of mastery, the creative active phase. Mozart was born into a musical family and began studying piano at the age of 4 with his father, Leopold, who was a violinist and a composer at the court of Salzburg. Despite his young age, Mozart showed a deep love and exceptional focus for music. Along with his sister, he traveled around Europe performing music. But as they grew older, the novelty of their performances began to wear off. Leopold secured Mozart a job as a court musician, but Mozart felt trapped in this role and struggled to find his own voice as a composer, feeling that his pieces were just imitations of others' work. At 25, he decided to leave, and this caused a rift with his father, which was permanent and painful. Determined to make up for lost time, Mozart threw himself into his music with an unprecedented intensity, composing at a prodigious speed and creating a radical sound that would not be fully appreciated until after his death. Several years later, his works including Don Giovanni became some of the most frequently performed operas in history. Childhood is a time when the mind is open and receptive to new experiences, leading to a sense of wonder and curiosity about the world. This quality, called the original mind, allows for flexibility and the ability to ask questions and think in a pre-verbal way. As we grow older, our minds become more rigid and defensive, relying on familiar words and opinions rather than looking at things directly. This is the conventional mind. Masters and those with a high level of creativity are able to retain a portion of this original mind, combining it with discipline and focus to create innovative ideas and works. They're able to access pre-verbal and unconscious forms of mental activity, which can lead to surprising and original ideas. This combination of the original mind, discipline, and focus is referred to as the dimensional mind. It allows for the retention of a childlike spirit and spontaneity while also giving you the patience and discipline to endure an extended apprenticeship and achieve mastery in a particular field. The dimensional mind is characterized by a playful approach to work and a deep engagement and excitement about the subject matter. It is this combination that leads to true creativity. Mozart is often seen as a child prodigy and a genius due to his exceptional abilities at a young age. However, his genius and creativity can be explained by his deep love of music, extensive hours of practice, and exposure to various musical trends. On top of this, his ability to reconnect with his childlike spirit allowed him to transform music into his own voice with something people hadn't heard before. His powerful attention and focus, combined with his extensive knowledge and apprenticeship, allowed him to think in musical terms and translate them easily onto paper. Mozart's achievements demonstrate the outer reaches of the creative potential that we all possess. He was using the dimensional mind. To cultivate the dimensional mind, it is necessary to have a thorough understanding of a particular field and having the flexibility to apply this knowledge in various ways. This requires a rigorous apprenticeship, which at this point you've already done, allowing the mind to focus on higher, more creative tasks. However, there is something you need to be aware of. The knowledge gained during the apprenticeship phase, including rules and procedures, can sometimes restrict your thinking and trap you in a one-dimensional prison. To avoid this, you have to encourage your mind to be active and exploratory rather than remaining in a conservative position. Robert Greene gives us 3 steps to awaken the dimensional mind. Step number 1, choosing the proper creative task. It is very important to choose the right creative task for yourself. Creativity is not simply an intellectual exercise. It is an endeavor that calls upon the entirety of yourself, emotions, energy, character, and mind. True creativity requires patience, perseverance, and an unwavering emotional commitment to one's chosen task. It's important to be fully invested in a task that resonates deeply within you, as this will enable you to endure the setbacks, failures, and hard work that you will inevitably face. A singular focus and all-consuming interest is crucial for success. Your emotional investment will be evident in the work you produce, and a lack of true investment will be very apparent to your audience. Remember, whether it be science, business, or the arts, the primary law of the creative dynamic is that your emotional commitment will be translated directly into your work. Step 2 is coming up with creative strategies. Robert Greene compares the mind to a muscle that can become tight and rigid over time if not consciously exercised. These tendencies cause a narrowing of focus and a reduction in considering alternative possibilities. The author suggests that this is a flaw that affects all of us, and the only way to counter this is by consciously enacting strategies that allow for flexibility in thinking. He recommends 5 strategies in the book that will help you loosen and stretch your mind, and here I've listed 2 that I found to be the most powerful. Number 1 is cultivate a negative capability. John Keats, a poet in 1817, wrote a letter in which he explained his recent thoughts on the creative process. He wrote that the world is far more complex than we can possibly imagine, and that everything in the universe is in a state of constant flux. The only solution for an enlightened person is to let the mind absorb itself in what it experiences without having to form a judgment on what it all means. You have to develop the ability to feel doubt and uncertainty for as long as possible. He called this ability to endure and even embrace mysteries and uncertainties as negative capability. All true masters of their craft possess this true negative capability. This quality allows them to entertain a broader range of ideas and experiment with them, which in turn makes their work richer and more inventive. Cultivating a negative capability will be the single most important factor in your success as a creative thinker. And the second point is to allow for serendipity. The brain is an instrument that is developed for making connections, and it works by comparing every bit of information that comes in with other information. Your task is to feed this natural inclination to make new and original associations between ideas and experiences. One of the best ways to do this is by letting go of conscious control and allowing chance to enter the process. When we are consumed with a particular project, our attention tends to become narrow and we close ourselves off from the rest of the world. This can make it harder for us to see other possibilities and be more open and creative with our ideas. We have to widen the search as far as possible, reading and absorbing any related information, and maintain an openness and looseness of spirit. By allowing chance to be a part of the creative process, you open yourself up to the possibility of serendipity and the occurrence of something unexpected that can lead to new and fertile connections. Step number 3 is breakthrough or insight. In the creative process, many masters will start a project with an initial intuition and excitement about its potential success, but as they progress, they begin to detect flaws and difficulties in their original idea that they had not foreseen. This leads to a sense of staleness and frustration as they try to force a solution. However, masters possess an important quality, which is that they're not easily satisfied by what they're doing and have high internal standards. They understand that the feeling of being blocked or the frustration has a higher purpose. At a particular point of high tension, they let go for a moment, whether it be stopping work or going to sleep, or deciding to take a walk. In these moments, the solution, the perfect idea for completing the work, automatically comes to them. This pattern of tension leading to a breakthrough is common in the creative process. The mounting frustration and tightness that comes from a single-minded devotion to one problem or idea will naturally lead to a breaking point. But when we let go, the ideas and the associations we had built up continue to bubble and incubate. Eventually, that leads to a breakthrough that might not have come otherwise. And now you're ready for phase 3, mastery. Everyone has the potential for a higher form of intelligence, which can be achieved through immersing ourselves deeply in a field of study and staying true to our inclinations, regardless of how unconventional they might seem to others. Through years of intense focus and dedication, we gain an intuitive understanding of the intricacies of our field and can combine this intuition with rational thinking and expand our minds to their full potential. Robert Greene says that this level of intelligence is what our brains are designed to attain, and that by pursuing our own interests to their fullest, we will naturally be led to this level of understanding and insight. Throughout history, many masters have described a sensation of suddenly possessing heightened intellectual powers after years of immersion in their field. They spoke of being able to think beyond the various moves of their pieces on a chessboard, seeing the entire architecture of a piece of music, or having a sudden grasp of the nature of the universe. These experiences of seeing more cannot be reduced to a formula, and the steps that they took to arrive at them cannot be reconstructed. This is a highly legitimate type of intelligence, but one that has to be understood in its own way. Robert Greene argues that understanding this type of thinking can help us access deeper parts of reality and see that such power is not miraculous, but intrinsically human and accessible to all of us. This intuition or fingertip feel and ability to see the bigger picture come together is what separates masters from their peers. This level of mastery is not just a function of time, although it can take 10 to 20,000 hours to reach this level. It's also a function of the intensity of focus, deliberate practice, and a tremendous amount of hard work. While the idea of attaining this level of mastery can seem daunting to most people, it explains why people who are often deemed stupid by society end up achieving incredible things. And if you follow the advice given in this book, perhaps one day you too can write your name in the history books. Now it's time to get to work.